Your taxes are paying for grooming gang monsters that we can't deport. Qari Abdul Rauf, the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang scandal, is remarkably still in Britain, 9 years after he was supposed to be deported. Can I just detail the catalogue of ways in which this guy has been allowed to take the absolute mick? He was jailed for just 6 years after being convicted of conspiracy to engage in sexual activity with children under 16 and trafficking for sexual exploitation. But he was freed on licence after just 2.5 years in prison. He then returned home to his wife and 5 children, so he could go back home to the same community that he lived in earlier, same house, same wife. He then racked up roughly £1 million in taxpayer-funded legal aid costs to avoid deportation. He renounced his Pakistani citizenship and is refusing to take it back, and now Pakistan are, quite rightly, saying that they don't want him. His accomplice, Adil Khan, who got an underage girl pregnant and trafficked another, has told a judge that he should not be deported because his son, quote, needs a role model. I'm sorry, but the implication here, again, is that this person is still in the family home, isn't it? In the same community. Why is it never spoken about that these kind of crimes are committed whilst the perpetrators are active members of the local Muslim community very often, like Rauf, who was an Islamic preacher? They do not appear to be turned over to police by members of that community all too often, who will no doubt claim that they had no knowledge of any wrongdoing. But these convicted paedophiles are then seemingly accepted back into the family home in many cases, back onto the same road. In Rochdale, a new report identified 96 men who could still pose a threat, many of whom are yet to be prosecuted. In Telford, the scene of Britain's worst grooming gang scandal, one of the ringleaders, Adel Eddie Ali, served just 8 years of a 26-year sentence. He was convicted of the rape of a 13-year-old girl, 6 offences of underage sex with the same girl, 3 charges of controlling a child prostitute and sexual activity with a second victim, 2 offences of sexual activity with a child involving a third girl, and offences of grooming and inciting child prostitution and sexual activity with a 4th victim. 8 years behind bars for that. In Rotherham, Kurban Ali and Tayyab Dad were automatically released after just 5 years. It was not even known if they were blocked from returning to their local area. So 5 years for some of the most extreme child sex offences you can imagine. In many cases, victims have not been told that their abusers have been released. And in many cases, those abusers were allowed to just go back home, as we've discussed. Now, I actually went to Telford a good number of years ago now. And I spoke to one of the grooming gang victims who told me that her attacker bumped into her in the shops. And in some cases, like that of Mr. Rauf, you're paying for their prosecution, you're paying for their prison cells, you're paying for their legal costs, you're paying for them to fight deportation, and quite possibly now you're paying their benefits. Now, Pakistan might not want them, but I don't care. We don't want them either, and something has to be done about this.